Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So we'll start back from where we left off on the Azure Data Services. जैसा कि मैंने बताया था कि this is one of the most critical things and one of the key areas where decision is made on which cloud vendor to choose. So there are different level of data services and we have to understand what service fits where. So last class में मैंने slide skip कर दी थी since we didn't have too much time and I wanted to go a little bit deep into this one. So we will start from this one again. So हमने जो 3 roles का बताए थे last time, database administrator, data engineer, data analytics, data उसके अंदर there are different products that you should take care of, right? That you should master. और उसमें high level हमने थोड़ा सा पढ़ा था. From a pure database services, these are the key areas when you start picking a database service from Azure. तो पहली हमने देखी थी Azure SQL और उसके अंदर मैंने दिखाया था there are 3 versions. There are 3 possibilities when you talk about Azure SQL. One was Azure SQL Virtual Machine. Second was Azure SQL Managed Instance. And the third was Azure SQL Database Server, right? Which is a pure PaaS service. Then we also talked about why we need these 3 different options. तो उसके अंदर हमने देखा था just for review, उससे हमने ये देखा था कि जो virtual machine है, it has some very specific use cases. I'll go into that one later on. Let's cover this slide first. तो इसके अंदर Azure SQL है, उसके अंदर 3 versions हैं. You need to be very clear, right? Azure SQL Database Server, Azure SQL Managed Instance, and Azure SQL Virtual Machine, IaaS Virtual Machine. ये 3 specific services हैं, and we should be very clear why we need each one of them. Besides SQL Server, then it provides you Azure Database Services for open source databases. And there are 3 databases covered. One is MariaDB, other one is MySQL, and third one is PostgreSQL. What Microsoft does in Azure is it provides you PaaS services for these open source databases. So you don't have to set up a virtual machine, you don't have to install, you don't have to do anything, right? You will start the service, PaaS service, and you can start using it. And you get all the benefits of the PaaS service based on these databases. Then you come to Cosmos DB. So this is a document database natively built for cloud. We'll discuss this one later on as well. It's a non-relational database system. हमने शुरू में पढ़ा था relational and non-relational. This is the non-relational database system. And there are multiple aspects of this one. We will take a look at the Cosmos DB as well. So it's very critical that we understand for which service we want to pick what. Last but not least, एक चीज हमने पहले भी देखी थी, that is Azure Table Storage या Azure Storage. उसके अंदर हमारे पास क्या ऑप्शंस थी Azure Storage के अंदर? हमने ये देखा था कि फाइल, ब्लॉब, टेबल्स एंड क्यूज. Just one second. Okay. Last one was Azure Table Storage. हमने उसमें पढ़ा था फाइल, उसके अंदर था हमारे पास सर्विसेज स्टोरेज के अंदर फाइल, ब्लॉब, टेबल एंड क्यूज. तो यहाँ पे you have table also. So that is a very cheap service for for a row column based storage. ठीक है? So these are the 4 options. यहाँ पे हमें Oracle नहीं नजर आया, right? Because it's not a database service that Azure provides. Oracle provides its own virtual machine from the marketplace on a pay-as-you-go model. You do not have the BYOL model. हमने दो models पढ़े थे, BYOL and pay-as-you-go. We do not have BYOL. BYOL is only available on Oracle's OCI cloud. Okay? Please be very clear on this one. Just like Microsoft SQL Server is not available for BYOL on any place else. It is only available. जी नहीं, BYOL किसका? ये मैंने बताया था कि जिस वेंडर का डेटाबेस है, दिस इज द फंडामेंटल प्रिंसिपल, अंडरस्टैंड द कॉन्सेप्ट. ओके, जो डेटाबेस है, जो डेटाबेस वेंडर है, उसकी BYOL ऑप्शन, ब्रिंग योर ओन लाइसेंस ऑप्शन, is only available on their own cloud. This is the concept. So if you apply this on Oracle, if you have Oracle existing license, you can use that only on Oracle cloud. For SQL Server, if you have existing license or if you purchase license, you can use it only on Azure. So understand the core concept. कोई भी तो अगेंस्ट दैट सारे डेटाबेस वेंडर्स कहते हैं आप हमारा डेटाबेस कहीं पे भी यूज कर लें, बट ओनली एज अ पे एज यू गो ऑप्शन. So we have gone over already the pros and cons of pay as you go and BYOL. So main thing is, as we know, pay as you go option is very, very expensive. And we discussed in the last class what are the motivations for each cloud vendor to offer BYOL license for their cloud offering on their cloud, right? Because they cannot shut down the, even if they shut down the virtual machine, they have already paid for the license. That's the motivation from the database vendor. And for motivation for the client, for the customer is, database license is already paid. They are not being charged all the time. They have paid upfront for the license. They can continue to run non-stop the virtual machines, right? Because they are not being billed for the license, which can be very, very expensive, especially for enterprise versions. So I just want you guys to be extremely clear on this BYOL and pay-as-you-go option, the motivations for these things from customer perspective and from vendor perspective. Next, you need to be absolutely clear that BYOL option is not available on the competitor's cloud. It's only available for their own cloud, okay? Whichever vendor is offering the service. So Oracle BYOL option, which is pre-purchasing of the license, that can be applied only on OCI. For SQL Server, the BYOL option, that is pre-purchase of license, is only available on Azure. You cannot pre-purchase the license and apply it on Azure, AWS, GCP or OCI. Last but not least, you need to be absolutely clear that BYOL option regarding Microsoft products is known as AHUB, Azure Hybrid Use Benefit. Azure Hybrid Use Benefits. So you should know when somebody talks about Azure Hybrid Use Benefits, that means they have pre-purchased the license for SQL Server or Windows, and they are going to apply that on Windows VMs or SQL Server VMs or PaaS services. Okay. So I will put some notes over here. Let me just. Okay. ये नोटपैड नजर आ रहा है आप लोगों को कि नहीं? Guys, can you see the notepad? Okay. Let me see if I can do a screen. Hold on. मैं अगर screen share करूँ your entire screen. Okay, I think this will be better. Yeah. Okay. तो हमने कहा था BYOL versus pay as you go. The BYOL is repurchase of license from the database vendor. From the vendor. Database, network appliance, firewall, etc. Whatever it is. So it can be anything. We are discussing right now database. ठीक है? और हमने कहा BYOL for MSFT products is AHUB. Azure Hybrid Use Benefits. That means you can take your आपने अगर virtual machine बनाई हुई है Windows की, you can shut it down and you can take it over there, migrate or create a new one and use the same license over there as well in Azure, which you cannot do for other cloud vendors in OCI and anywhere else. So आपके data stores are these are the 4 ones. बाकी जो हैं सारे they are all IaaS based virtual machines in the marketplace provided by the specific vendors. Azure has nothing to do with them. Microsoft has nothing to do with them. These are their cloud offerings, templates, services available in the marketplace. Now we come to the other part which deals with data services, which is data engineering and analytics. उसमें आपको, when you talk about these things, right, that means you have to pull the data from somewhere. You have to manipulate the data, which is basically ETL. You have, just a moment, please. Sorry. तो इसके अंदर when you talk about data engineering and analytics, इसके अंदर सबसे अहम चीज़ है which is to understand हम क्या करना चाह रहे हैं. यहाँ आपने स्टोर किया था, यहाँ पे सारे OLTP databases हैं, ठीक है? OLTP database, standard relational database, and non-relational. Here we are talking about data processing, data engineering, ETL, and also last but not least is the governance and the presentation. Okay. So इसके अंदर जो key product है, which is the Azure Data Factory, this is for the ETL. Or you can do, of course, product doesn't have ETL, or it's an ETL product, or of course you can do ELT as well. We discussed this thing, right? ELT versus ETL. The point is, whatever you want to do, you can do that in Azure Data Factory. तो हमने बताया था कि SQL Server की product जो stack है, it comprises, जब आप box product लेते हो, it has 4 different things, right? SQL Server Database Engine, SQL Server Integration Services, which is the ETL engine, SQL Server Analysis Services, which is the OLAP engine, which does the cubes and multi-dimensional data view, which is used for aggregations and caching and extremely high-speed, queries basically, right? And last is SQL Server reporting services. तो उसका जो key part SSIS integration services, the ETL tool. This is the cloud version of SSIS, Azure Data Factory, created by the same team who developed the SSIS. same experience went into building this high performance engine for ETL/ELT. And nice thing is this is all transaction based. This is serverless compute. You pay by the transaction. You're not paying for the compute. I think they are providing an option now for the compute as well, that you can have dedicated compute for ADF, okay, for data pipelines. Azure Synapse Analytics is essentially a data warehouse system which can handle petabytes of data. Yeah. Underneath storage, everything, it takes care of it. Nice thing is you can do extensive analysis. You can do machine learning pipelines. It also integrates natively with Apache Spark. You can do sub-second queries on petabytes of data. And you can do standard SQL queries as well. Okay? So it's a very, very sophisticated data analytics engine, Azure Synapse Analytics. And it's pretty costly. Okay? तो इसी तरह की ऑफरिंग GCP के ऊपर भी अवेलेबल है, इसी तरह की ऑफरिंग AWS के ऊपर भी अवेलेबल है. But this is Microsoft's core big data engine, Azure Synapse Analytics. Now, if somebody wants not all of that, but simply they want to deal with Apache Spark, then you can use either Apache Spark virtual machines or a PaaS service based on Azure Databricks. और ये मैंने बताया था कि Azure Databricks जो है, that is also built by the same guys who built the open source Apache Spark system. And there's specific reasons why they went ahead, created a separate company and based their product on Apache Spark. So Apache Spark जो है, is basically a kind of a standalone tool, and you have to integrate a lot of services to have a complete end-to-end ecosystem, which I don't want to go into the details of right now. What are the changes? What are the extensions built on top of Apache Spark? But what they did was they developed their product and they made it available on all the cloud vendors. So you can use Apache Azure Databricks. It's not very expensive. And nice thing is, since you're doing massive and data analysis on massive amount of data, that means you need to have very big underneath compute. So nice thing in Databricks is it can start the compute when you're doing analysis. And you can say that once it is idle for 1 hour or whatever time, then shut it down. So it's not running all the time. When you are doing analysis, when you're doing data cleansing, whatever you want to do, it starts the underneath compute / virtual machines, and it can shut them off when you're done, after some time when you're done. Okay? So it gives you that cost efficiency as well. So it's very important to understand what is used where. See, this is your tool chest where you have all these different tools, and you should know where to use what to do with each thing. Stream analytics. When we talk about stream, data stream, that means data is coming in like जिस तरह पानी नहीं खुला हुआ होता. It's kind of like that, and it's generally for IoT based devices where you have hundreds and thousands of devices. They're sending telemetry, whatever kind of data is coming in, right? And you want to capture and do real-time analysis as well. So this is where Azure Stream Analytics come into the picture. We have another product called Azure Data Explorer. When you have massive amount of logs, right? You can do real-time data analysis. ये जो Microsoft करता है आपकी जो हमारी जो telemetry के ऊपर हम Windows के ऊपर कहते हैं help improve this product. What they're doing, they're getting added additional telemetry data. आपका usage data they're getting. Of course they mask it, modify it, but they're getting the telemetry data, and they have doing real-time analysis how things are going based on what something crashed, on and on. ये जो इनके bug fixes आते हैं, lot of this is based on this telemetry data also. And what you opt in, what you opt out, those kind of things. Okay. There's another thing called Microsoft Purview, Enterprise Data Governance. I will not go deep into this one. Main thing is, आपकी कोई entities होती हैं, you want to control who is the master copy, where the data will flow from, and where the data will get updated. So that's what Azure Purview is, data governance, and it also allows you to see where the entity exists, where the entities exist, and who is the master source of this one. Essentially, it has connectors to connect to everything. Then it discovers all the entities. Then it tries to map what might be duplicated in different things. And then you can say what is master and those kind of things. Okay? So it maps your whole organization, gives you a view of everything in a very nice way, and allows you to set up governance, who is the master copy, and where the data will flow from, and how to control various things, right? It is not you. It is used in very mature organizations who have control and who wants further governance. So generally, I have not seen too much usage of these tools. Again, the organization must be very mature, right, on these things when they implement these kind of things. And one of the industry leaders is Informatica. So Microsoft is coming into this picture now in the enterprise data governance. Last but not least, if सारा कुछ हो गया, you need to show the results, and that's where Microsoft Power BI is used. Yeah. You can drill down, you can slice, dice the data, you can have all sort of different kind of modes and all that, right? All sort of data visualizations, interactive data visualizations, so on and so forth. So basically, very sophisticated online reporting engine. Yeah. And it can connect to pretty much everything. Just a moment. इसमें knowledge check in the basically first question, which one of the following tasks is responsibility of a database administrator? And you can see the database administrator was in the first column, right, in this column, and that is basically backing up and restoring databases. Your dashboard and reports and pipelines were all database, for example, data analytics and data engineer, right? So let's take a look if this is true. Yeah. So this is the role of database administrator. Dashboard reports is data analytics, analysis, and pipelines is for the data engineer. Okay. What role is most likely to use Azure Data Factory? Again, this is a second column. There are data factory, ETL, ELT. It must be data engineer, right? Analyst is the Power BI guy, okay, who needs to analyze the data. So let's take a look. Okay, data engineer. Which single service would you use to implement data pipelines, SQL Analytics, and Spark Analytics, right? There's only one product that does all of this, right? Which is the Azure Synapse Analytics, okay? Because Microsoft has embedded or integrated Spark also in their product, and database, SQL database has no understanding of Spark. Power BI is only for visualization and analysis. So it's Azure Synapse Analytics, okay? It can do data pipelines, SQL Analytics, and Spark Analytics. I'm expecting you guys to know this stuff, okay? I'm going to go over this one. Pretty straightforward. This is all from your database course. So relational tables, you have tables, rows and columns, same column for all rows, and you have each column has a data type. Normalization, you need to understand these concepts. I will ask you these things, okay? It's extremely critical when you're using database services, because some of your critical decisions will be based on these things, which thing you will pick. So again, I'm going to skim over this. You should know this from your database course. Again, when you talk about normalization, right, each entity needs to go into its old table. So this is, for example, sales data, right? This sales data is denormalized right now. Everything is there. And we know that this will be, we talked about in the class, this is when you do denormalization, data gets replicated. You can see customer, same customer, its data is getting replicated, okay? But here, when we normalize this one, all replicated or duplicate data is gone, right? This one, and based on the discrete attribute, right, order number or ID, you separate these things, okay? And then you create the primary key, foreign key columns to link the different entities. Your primary key है ID, and you have, it is acting as a foreign key over here, right? It's pretty straightforward concept. I'm just skimming it over this one. So there are three main things or three categorization of SQL: DDL, DCL and DML. Okay. So आपकी data definition language where you define your data dictionaries, define your tables, and then of course defining means you are creating, altering, dropping, renaming, whatever, right? Data control language, right? We are denying, granting and revoking permissions and various different things. And DML is the insert, update, delete and select. These are the three categorization of SQL. Oracle or SQL or Oracle SQL Server, they both have their own SQL extensions. Microsoft is called T-SQL and Oracle is called PL-SQL. These are the two extensions. So you should know when you're dealing with Oracle, it's PL-SQL. When you talk, somebody says PL-SQL, that means that is the Oracle extension to SQL, the standard SQL language. And when somebody says T-SQL, that is Microsoft extension to the SQL Server. So when databases say they support SQL, there is a standard, ISO standard or ANSI standard, and then they have their own extensions. ये मैंने उस दिन भी बताया था, what are some of the other database objects? Views हैं that SQL query as virtual table. It gives you back something as a table. So yeah, it's a query gives you virtual table. Virtual table means that the result comes back to you as a table, and you can have different joins and all that. It makes your queries and system easier, right? When you're reporting कर रहे हो, instead of writing a complex query in report, आप view बना लेते हो, and then you simply call the view from your report or wherever. Stored procedures, if you want to do any kind of any SQL command based on some parameters and those kind of things, these are compiled, so they run very, very quickly. Okay. Last but not least is indexes. So these are data structures where data is stored, pulled from the tables, and it has pointers, right? So if you can see, this is the separate data structure for the indexes that has pointers to the table. So query is done against the index and the rows are pulled. Okay? So you don't have to do table scans. That's the idea. So first one, which of the following is the characteristics of a relational database? A row in it with a single instance of an entry. See? It's this one, right? Row in a table represents a single instance of an entity. Okay. Columns in a table must be same. This is not true. Rows in the same table can have different columns. That is not true either. Yeah. Which SQL script is used to query tables and return data? That is a select query. Query is a standard, it's a generic word. It's read or select. It's a select statement. Okay. What is an index? Structure that enables queries to look at rows in a table quickly. Okay, that's what it is. So we should know what an index is and what it is used for and how it is stored and how it is used to locate the rows in a table quickly. You should know these kind of things. Okay? ये हमने last time हमने यहाँ से पढ़ा था. I skipped the previous one. So I wanted to cover all those things today, since we didn't have last time too much time. So just to rehash, मैंने कहा था SQL Server on Azure VMs. तो आपको it's given to you as an IaaS service and Microsoft take care of certain things, but understand we need to be very clear why we are picking up this one. और मैंने इसको दो critical motivations बताई थी which everyone should know. That is, first one is, अगर आपका कोई third party software run कर रहा है आपके on premises and is using SQL Server VM and now you're trying to migrate, or you simply want to set up a third party software on Azure virtual machines and the software vendor says, I will not support this software running on SQL PaaS of any sort, then you must use SQL Server on Azure VMs, the first option, the IaaS option. Okay. Second one is, if you need to install some software on the same virtual machine, on the same environment where SQL Server is running, to get the SQL Server functionality, then you must use the first option, the IaaS option. Okay. जिस तरह मैंने उसकी specific example बताई थी, SQL Server has a free text search, but it needs the indexers for different data types. It has built-in indexers for Microsoft Office documents, but not for anything else. So if you want to index PDF and you want SQL Server to be able to do free text search on PDF documents, you must install PDF filter or PDF indexer. For that, you must use SQL Server on Azure VMs. Okay. So these are two things that forces you SQL Server on Azure VM. Other thing is, you need to understand what you are responsible for. You manage everything: OS upgrade, SQL Server upgrade, backups, replications, whatever. You need to take care of everything, just like we discussed virtual machine in the beginning. Okay. You also need to make sure you need to get the license, or you need to use the pay-as-you-go model, or you can use, in SQL Server case, AHub, which is the pay-as-you-go, right? We said AHub, which is Azure Hybrid Use Benefits, can be applied. Okay. Last but not least, if you have very complex environments, very complex databases, generally this is a good idea, one of the good solutions to move as is without compromise anything, and after that you can think about modernization to PaaS services once you move, right? So as is migration for very complex environments, you can use the SQL Server on Azure VMs. Then you come to manage instance, and we'll look a little bit deeper today on MI. Okay? Why it does all of this stuff, why it allows near 100% compatibility. So a lot of time, as long as those two factors are not applicable, we should be able to use SQL MI. Those two factors means those two critical requirements. If those are not needed on SQL Server on Azure VMs, right, we should be able to use Azure SQL MI. They'll give us, Microsoft will take care of all of this stuff on MI, right? Automatic backups, patching, database monitoring, any other maintenance task, everything, Microsoft will take care of it. Okay? But generally, it's a very good idea, as long as you don't have support issues, to move to SQL MI, and this is what we try to achieve usually, right? We want to move at least on SQL Server MI, Azure SQL MI. We want to move to SQL Server MI mostly. Okay. Azure SQL database, it provides you core database, right? It's core database functionality. See, this one says compatibility with SQL Server on premises. This is database functionality, only database, okay? And we'll discuss this why. What is the difference? Because we said SQL Server has lot of services. MI gives you all those services. Azure SQL Database has only the core database engine, okay? And here is the scenario, great for new cloud-based applications, okay? We need to understand each one where it is used for. So since you do not have any backward compatibility issues, you do not have any migration issues, and you want to do brand new development, you want to start with Azure SQL Database, okay? So Azure SQL is the generic term used to describe family of Azure Relational Database Services based on SQL Server. Just one second. So let's take a look what else is there. Then we need to look at what the other services are. तो ये हमारा पहला column चल रहा है अभी from the beginning, right? We are looking at the first column primarily in this one. There is a separate course, there are separate slides and separate, content for the data engineer and data analyst. We are looking at primarily these things, the data services. Just a moment. So first is MySQL. So MySQL started as a simple to use open source DBMS. Okay? तो इसके अंदर जो LAMP stack sometimes कहा जाता है, which is the Linux, Apache, MySQL and PHP. This is the LAMP application stack. उसके अंदर ये MySQL, the M stands for MySQL. ठीक है? So this is what it is used for. Then we come to MariaDB. So MariaDB is a newer database management system and is created by the original developers of MySQL. So they took that and then they rewrote and optimized the performance. Another critical part of MariaDB is it provides compatibility with Oracle database. Okay, and we can go later on deep into what this might be, what level of compatibility is done with Oracle database, from the query perspective, from the table perspective, from supporting which Oracle extensions, right? Last but not least is Postgres. Again, it's a hybrid relational object database. And when you talk about object, right, that you can store objects, your database objects into this one and pull and query and all that. Okay, so they are object databases, they're relational databases, and this is a hybrid relation and object storage. Okay, again, when you talk about objects, which is custom data types, right? It is custom data types. So you can store data in relational tables, but a Postgres SQL database also allows you to store custom data types with their own non-relational properties, right? The way objects are, the way your programming objects are, you can store those things also. So there's a separate category of databases called object databases, and Postgres SQL allows you to store objects as well. आपकी अगर class है, कोई आपने class बनाई है, whatever it is, right? When you're doing object-oriented programming, those things you can store them directly into the Postgres SQL. Again, which deployment option offers the best compatibility with migrating an existing SQL Server on-premises solution, which is Azure SQL Managed Instance, okay? Always. Azure SQL Database, we have not touched the Elastic Pool. I will see if time permits, we'll do the Elastic Pool option. But main thing is, MI is the one, okay? Which of the following statements is true about Azure SQL Database? Most of it, so basically this one, you must purchase a SQL Server license? No, right? Why not? Because you can go run Azure SQL Database in what we call pay-as-you-go mode. So no problem with this one. It only supports one database? Of course not. You can do whatever, right? So most database maintenance tasks are automated. Maybe it's this one. I want to see how they're answering. Yeah, that's fun. Which database service is the simplest option for migrating a LAMP application to Azure? Right? We said LAMP is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Of course, you need the MySQL from the M perspective, so it needs to be Azure database for MySQL. Okay. So this is the data services, right? Let's look at briefly from Cosmos DB perspective. Now, this is for applications. It's a NoSQL database, right? It's a document database, key value based. You can do multiple things, right? It supports 4 different modes. One is document based, one is graph based, one is key value tables, one is column family stores. Okay, I talked to you about column based, but basically these are 4 different modes it supports. Okay, main thing is it's a NoSQL database, and we'll discuss this one later on. Nice thing about this one is it is built natively. So when you talk about document graphs and these things, generally outside in the industry, there are 4 different products for these kind of things. So what they have done in Cosmos DB is they have given you one database service that supports all these things. Okay? It supports all these ways of storing and retrieving data from one database service. Okay? That is one thing. Nice thing also is it says supports for multi-storage, right? So what happens is the relational databases store data in relational tables, right? But that sometimes can be too rigid, right? And based on your usage, you want something else, right? So besides the SQL model, other models known as NoSQL models, right? And these models store data in other data structures such as documents, graphs, key values, and column family stores. What happens also is Azure DB supports multiple storage APIs. What does that mean? That means that it enables developers to use programming semantics of many common type of data stores to work with data in a Cosmos DB. So you won't know, for example, if you need some other database, Cosmos DB provides you the API, same API, but in the backend is Cosmos DB. Okay. So, for example, we'll discuss and see what those databases are in a minute. Okay. Another very important thing is that it uses indexing and data partitioning to provide extremely fast read and write performance, right? And it can scale to excessive amount of data, huge amount of volume of data. It has another very nice thing, which is the multi-region writes. So you can, for example, if application is deployed in a specific region, you can enable multi-region write, and you can have that application write to copy of Cosmos DB in that region, and behind the scenes it will automatically replicate. It has very sophisticated replication mechanism, okay, to take care of those kind of things. So अगर आपके distributed users हैं, Cosmos DB will allow you to work with them. आपकी applications install हुई हैं in different regions. We discussed this one. For example, in UAE region आपकी application है for UAE customers. यूरोप के कस्टमर्स के लिए यूरोप के डेटा सेंटर में, यूएस कनाडा कस्टमर्स और मैक्सिको के कस्टमर्स के लिए यूएस के डेटा सेंटर के अंदर. So you can do multi-region writes. You can build your application on Cosmos DB, and each one can write to their own region. They don't have to span multiple regions to write to some other to the central copy, right? So this is a very, very nice functionality that allows you to handle that part, right? Here are the database APIs. So Cosmos DB for NoSQL, this is the native API, right? This is a native API for Cosmos DB. Then similarly, अगर आपका MongoDB है, so you don't have to have MongoDB. You can use Cosmos DB and it provides you the API for MongoDB. यानी कि आपकी application can seamlessly, अगर on premises आप इस्तेमाल कर रहे हो MongoDB, you can seamlessly start using Cosmos DB without touching your application. You can change the connection string, and Cosmos DB की जो API है, you can invoke that, and you can essentially, without touching your application, it will act as MongoDB. Same thing with PostgreSQL. Same thing for Azure Table Storage. But then, why you have table storage? Table storage, for example, if you have table storage you've been using, you want to switch to an enterprise service, okay? Key value storage API, then you can use Cosmos DB, and your application doesn't have to change. It provides the same API compatibility with table storage. And then you have GraphDB, Apache Gremlin, you have Apache Cassandra. I'm not sure about the Apache Cassandra, but anyway, if you're using any of these ones, Cosmos DB, you can use Cosmos DB seamlessly without touching your application. Okay, it provides you all of that functionality. Let me see. So Apache Cassandra is essentially, let me see. Yeah, this is one is the column family storage, right? The last one we saw. So column families are tables similar to those in relational database, right? And the important part is that it is not mandatory for every row to have the same columns. Okay, so this row might not have that column, manager column. Okay, so this allows you to skip columns for different rows, store different objects different places without ensuring that this column will be available for this object, right? So this is the column family databases, okay, Apache Cassandra. Last but not least, the Apache Gremlin. So as a database engineer, as a database administrator, you should know this stuff. What are the different database services available, and what are the Azure database services that match to those things? So idea is not to start installing and using every product. You should be able to use these products and define your architecture and provide guidance to the application team that we don't have to do this. We have a PaaS service that provides you full compatibility with this system. You don't have to go create a VM and install and so on and so forth, right? This is the beauty of this approach, that they have implemented the APIs of all these software in front of the Cosmos DB. Okay? So Gremlin API is used to work with data in a graph structure, right? And graph, this is based on graph theory, right? Entities are defined as vertices that form nodes in graphs or connected graphs, right? फिर जो graph theory के अंदर है, nodes are connected by edges that represents relationships. Okay, so you should understand vertices. You should understand what the different things are, right? Graph, vertices, edges, so on and so forth. This is based on graph theory and this is based on graph databases. Okay? तो यहाँ पे हमारे पास दो vertices हैं, right? Employee and department. So employee Ben reports to employee Sue, and both employees work in the hardware department. Okay, so ये edges are basically let me see. Yeah, the vertices are employees and department यहाँ पे, and then edges are connecting them. So we should understand it's essentially a graph theory that you should have covered already. That is using, right? So based on graph theory, it creates the relationships and everything, and you can use Cosmos DB to support that if you're using this kind of thing. You can go into this one. I will post these slides, and you can do these things, okay? You can do, and I would highly recommend you to do this exercise, okay? Let me see what else is there. So store and query JSON documents in Azure Cosmos DB. How would you do that? This is the classic case of NoSQL. This is the native API. Okay, this is this one, Cosmos DB for NoSQL for JSON documents. Okay. DB API used to work with data in which ये graph using vertices and edges. This is for the Cosmos DB for Apache Gremlin. Okay. And this one is how can you enable globally distributed users to work with their own local replica of a Cosmos DB database. This is for the multi-region writes. Okay, enable multi-region writes that allows you to do this one. Very, very critical to understand these things. Okay, these are critical design decisions that we should know. Okay. Yeah, हम पढ़ चुके हैं already. I'll leave it. This is based on blob storage. Main चीज यहाँ पे है, which is yes going towards table storage. Okay, this is the final thing. So यहाँ पे when you talk about data lake storage Gen 2, this is part of the Azure. This is if you're using table storage, right? This is the fourth item. This is for the table storage. So if you're doing this one, this is the fourth item, like last item in the Azure Data Services. So main thing is that it provides you hierarchy access. It does, for example, file and directory level access controls if you're storing files and various different things. Okay. And this is primarily used for large analytics system like Hadoop, Databricks, Azure Synapse Analytics. उसके अंदर हम फाइलें लेके आते हैं from ETL tool. We have directories, we store them different places with different permissions, and ETL tools picks them up. उसमें different permissions होती हैं, who can see what data and all that, right? So the large scale analytical system है, उसके अंदर we use this is called ADLS, okay? And this is right now the second version, Gen 2. There was Gen 1, they did a lot of enhancements to support different functionalities, and now this is Gen 2, this is ADLS, okay? Commonly known as this is the abbreviations of this, okay? And you have to do, this is the critical functionality that was added, hierarchical namespace. This is the hierarchical namespace, right? There's a hierarchy of data, how you're storing it, directories and files, very similar to what you do in a file system, right, on an operating system. But you're given this functionality at storage level. This is the important thing, right? There is no operating system running over here. So at a storage level, you are provided this functionality. Understand this very, very clearly, okay? So you enable this functionality of the hierarchical namespace during storage account creation. You can put a check mark and say, I want this functionality. And it is used very extensively by Azure Synapse Analytics, Databricks, which is essentially Spark, and Hadoop, and these kind of things. Okay. This is your Azure table storage. Okay. We have discussed this one already in Azure files. I will skip this one. This is coming to the table storage now. So this is on the from the storage perspective. This is one of the service, right? We saw 4 services: Azure blob container. Then we have queues, table, and what else was there? There was a 4th one also. Anyway, so this is what it is. It's a very cheap way of using row column kind of relationship. Okay, and you can do some basic relationships as well. And you can do partitioning of this one. You can say, I want to partition different rows into different partitions, right? So when it does query, it can go to specific partitions. And you can skip, right? This property doesn't need to be here and so on and so forth. It is flexible, not a relational database. It's a table storage, okay? Key value table storage, not a relational. Relational, you enforce certain things, right? That every row must have all these columns. Might be null value, but you need to have. But here, doesn't need to be, okay? And you will not get a null value. It will only give you this thing back and the values that it has back to you when you do the query, okay? Understand this fundamental difference between relational tables versus key value tables, okay? So in relational, आपको null values मिल जाएंगी उसकी where there is no value. Here, it's simply that this column doesn't belong to this entity, so it will not give you null. It just simply doesn't exist, this column, okay, for this entity. Again, try to do this lab as well. Let me see. Okay. What are the elements of an Azure table storage key? Let's see. I think it's table name and column name. I think it's partition key and row key, table storage key, or maybe row number. No, it might be this one. Okay, I think it's this one, the second one. Yeah. क्योंकि partitions में store कर रहा है, so it needs to know which partition and what row, basically. What you should do to an existing Azure storage account in order to support a data lake for Synapse Analytics. Okay, this was this one. Okay, I don't know if you paid attention. This was the upgrade part. Okay, and you will see. I'll go back to this one. I skipped this point. See? Upgrade existing storage account. If you want this one, upgrade existing storage account. It's one way. You cannot go back to Gen 1. Okay, in Gen 2 you have this hierarchical namespace, and if you have an existing storage account, you can do a one-way upgrade process to support this one, which is used by Synapse and various different your data analytics engines. तो पहला था हमारा partition key and row. This was upgrade cloud-based network file shares. Okay, which was, again, this we have covered this already. This is Azure files. Okay, file share, cloud-based file share. It is Azure files. Okay, good. Now I want to go over a little bit more deeper into Azure MI, SQL MI, Azure SQL MI. Okay? Give me just one moment. So let's go over this one. We'll go a little bit deeper into this one. This is the one of the critical and premier offering on the data services from Microsoft, part of the family of Azure SQL databases, and we are discussing the managed instances. Okay. So idea is how we can migrate and move very, very quickly and get benefits of cloud. Okay. And these are the various different ways. Rehost, I mean, this is hosted on premises, but we want to host it on Azure, which is primarily the lift and shift option. Okay, let me just okay, lift and shift. Rehost is lift and shift, means it is hosted on premises, we are rehosting it on cloud. Refactor, modify, upgrade, do whatever, re-architect, change the whole architecture, update, whatever, right, and rebuild. And so these are various different migration options. And generally when you're dealing with MI, we are dealing with rehosting, okay? But want to get the benefits of the cloud. Easily migrate without changing anything, without refactoring, re-architecting or rebuilding. We want to lift and shift, but we want to get the benefits of cloud as well. This is the area you want to focus on, okay? So managed instance allows you to do these two things, okay? Rehosting or very light refactoring, but generally want to move as is as quickly as possible to cloud. Okay? So these two things it eliminates when you're moving to SQL MI. No need to re-architect, no need to rebuild, okay? And we'll see that shortly. Okay. So here the issue is from the optimization perspective, from management perspective, IS, the virtual machine, SQL Server virtual machine option has, you don't get the benefit of cloud properly, right? It is hosted over there, but you're still doing all the work. So we want to see how we can move without modifying much as quickly as possible, but get the benefits of cloud, okay? So this is how things are designed. We put these factors up front, the product teams, and then they see how we can design a solution, a service to handle these things, okay? So this is how these kind of services come into the picture. Okay. So what is a managed instance, okay? So idea is you are providing a fully managed service, okay? Exactly same as your on-premises, but it's fully managed. Okay? You're getting the PaaS benefits, which is no need of managing OS, no need of managing database. Okay? Second part is once you get the cloud benefits, another critical part is to help with migration. You have pretty much 100% compatibility, nearly 100% compatibility. There are certain very minor things I have not come across anywhere where we are not able to move to SQL MI. Okay? Very rare situations, and those couple of situations I have told you already. Those are non-technical reasons, generally speaking, right? Where you're forced to use a SQL Server VM. Another very important thing, it is sitting on your own VNet. Private IP address, you can shut down the service completely from outside. It gives you the public IP as well. If you want, you can completely disable that one. Okay? You can use it from the VPN internally from wherever, just like your own database server. So it gives you complete isolation. Okay? I don't want to go into the pricing options right now. Okay? So again, when you're working with database servers, right? What you're looking for, you need to manage hardware, you need to manage software, and you need to manage disaster recovery. So MI they take care of everything. Okay, so you can do compute and storage, whatever you want on demand. It creates, and it has very fast scaling. That means if I want to change the cores, change the storage, change anything right away just with a slider or tick box, I can do that one. Okay? Microsoft take care of all the updates, patches. Backups are built in. You can restore anytime you want to from wherever. High availability you can get, disaster recovery you can get. Automatically it will give you a secondary copy somewhere else in a different region. So you get all of those things without doing anything, right? I mentioned this in the class that this is the critical part of administration where you don't have to do much, right? It takes care of everything. You only focus on your business and your applications. So always understand the motivation of these things. I'll skip this one. These are some of the advanced features. I'll skip this one. Okay, we'll focus on the other important things. Compatibility part. Okay. So this is what I talked about, right? What are the things that SQL Server VM has that we need in a managed instance? और इसके अंदर क्या होता है कि you can write code in .NET in a SQL Server. You have some of these services, which is service broker, CDC, transaction replication. These are the services running on a SQL Server on premises on a VM. So SQL MI provides you all of those things. Lot of companies have, what they've done is they have written .NET code that SQL Server can invoke to do data manipulation, okay, or whatever they want to do. Those things you cannot use with the, you must have a VM. So SQL Server MI, it supports .NET. CLR means Common Language Runtime, CLR module. Okay, main thing is your own custom code attached to SQL Server. MI supports that as well. Okay. Okay. These things are already available, I believe, MSDTC and R services in a SQL MI. Main thing is whatever you are using, SQL MI has it already, okay, and it can support you. So it is not just a database engine, it has all the other services that are available with a regular SQL Server. It has all those in a PaaS fashion. Okay. Then you have, for example, you have certain privileges. You have any functionality like SQL agent. This is, I mentioned to you, this is for the jobs and various different things, running and scheduling of different things. This is SQL agent. DB mail, this is to send database mail from SQL Server. It has everything, okay? Everything is built in into SQL MI. So that makes it, when they talk about near 100% compatibility, this is precisely what they're talking about. That all these different things that you've been using on premises SQL Server, everything is available over here as well. Yeah. So for the database engine, we can go to MI. For SSIS, SQL Server Integration Services, we can go to SSIS in Azure Data Factory. So Azure Data Factory, as I mentioned, it has native serverless functionality. It can also take your SSIS pipelines from on-premises, SSIS jobs, and it can run them natively as well in Azure. Okay, so it allows you to do all of those things and help you migrate off of your on-premises environment. That's the idea. And again, if you have analysis services, cubes, whatever, you have Azure analysis services that allow you to move your cubes and analysis services data to Azure. So these are three services: SQL Server Engine, ETL, and the cubes OLAP model, and allows you to move to these three services. Okay. And again, now generally the idea is, so these are the four things inside SQL Server, as I mentioned in the beginning, right? SQL Server Engine, SSIS, SSAS, SSRS. And basically SSRS reports are generally migrated to Power BI. So we need to be very clear that if you're moving from SQL Server and the SQL Server stack, which has multiple different services, what we will move to, okay? So this migration and migrating to is very critical. Okay, now let me see, what time is it? Good. I think that's all I have. I will give you this slide deck as well. Let me see, there are customer stories as well. This is our internal deck, and they have done, these are all the stories of massive migrations to SQL Server MI. Okay. So you can see how big blocker it was and how critical that service was to enable SQL Server MI. Okay. कितनी इनको feedback मिली थी that we really need a nice way to move to a PaaS service. Okay. And it talks about what the different services. Okay. Let me see if I want to cover these things as well. That's fine. Yeah, but basically they're talking about how do you connect, right? It is sitting on a VNet, it is isolated completely, and what do you do, right? So you can have VNet to VNet communication, you can have applications in a different VNet. This one is sitting in its own VNet. What do you do, right? Between to open VNet to VNet communication, we discussed this in great detail. This is, we can peer them and the app can start talking to SQL Server if it is sitting in a separate VNet, right? So these are the architecture we should understand. If I give you this thing, you should know, if I say how the app will talk to IS hosted app in VNet 2, will talk to SQL instance, how it will do that, right? That means you must do VNet 1 to VNet 2 peering. It will open the communication, and then you can talk to these things. App can start talking to the SQL instance, right? Understand these design decisions, right? This is VNet to VNet. If I do this one, this is peering essentially that is happening over here. Also, if I need to connect to Power BI, Power BI is a public service, okay? It's on a public URL, powerbi.com. If it needs to connect to SQL, what we do is we have the NSG. If you remember NSG, right? We said we are doing subnetting to control who can come in. So from the NSG, we allow the Power BI service to come and connect to this one. So we allow this one, okay? So these are the benefits or how the architecture gets built on different things. Here specifically how we are doing subnetting and how we are connecting different services. And here the control is through NSG, Network Security Group. We discussed this in the review session also. I will skip this one, okay? Don't worry about this one. This is अपने reference के लिए रख लो इसको, this part, okay? Okay, and here it is the important part, Azure hybrid benefits, okay? आपका standard edition, enterprise edition, you get 1-to-1 ratio. एक core है आपकी on premises, you get the same core license on this thing as well, okay? And you can see also the exclusive on Azure. वो कहता है कि enterprise edition है, आप इसको general purpose tier के अंदर जा रहे हो. Understand this one, okay? So general purpose is like a standard edition. So standard goes into standard, it's 1-to-1 ratio. Enterprise goes into enterprise, it's 1-to-1 ratio. But enterprise goes into standard, you get 1-to-4 ratio. यहाँ पे 1 core है आपके पास, you can get 4 cores over here, okay? So they are saying if enterprise edition, you want to go to general purpose because you know Microsoft is managing this one. So आप कहते हो जी मैंने इसके ऊपर जाना है कि मैं general purpose इस्तेमाल कर लूँ. आपको एक core के बदले you get 4 cores of Azure SQL Server general purpose. Okay? These benefits are exclusive on Azure. Okay. So AHB is AHub, Azure hybrid benefits. Okay. Don't worry about software assurance, but main thing is that what MI is, and with Azure hybrid benefit, you can say up to 55% saving. It's a massive, massive saving that you get only on Azure. Skip this one. We have not covered reservations. I will maybe cover it later on what reservations are. Essentially, you say that if you commit to use the service 24/7 for the whole year, Microsoft gives you about 20-25% savings. And if you make the same commitment for 3 years, Microsoft gives you 40 to 45% savings basically, okay? So on the compute. So this is what it is. It's not on the license, it's only on compute. Again, I don't want to go over the reservation, reserved capacity, okay? I don't want to go over this one, but this is one of the very, very important parts, what the reservations are and what do they do, okay? I'm finishing. I'm finishing this one. So this is primarily what I want to cover, the database services. I'm stopping now, and we will have the quiz on next class on this one, okay? On the database services. What we covered last time and what we covered today, okay?